When you join an MBA program, something really funny happens. So here's this. You assume that you're going to be learning finance and investing and marketing for 2 years, and then you'll apply for a job and get something. But what really happens is just within 2 weeks of my MBA program at Wharton, we had our first resume workshop, which means the business school is helping us prepare our resume so that we can apply, and the job application process and interviews, they will start right in the first semester. You have not done any courses, finished nothing, but the job applications are already happening and you have to now decide what you want to do. Now, before my MBA, I was a cop, a police officer in India, and I had very little idea about the business world. So I just looked at what people do, and most people at business schools like Wharton, where I went, they would apply for two kinds of jobs. One is what is called consulting or management consulting, where you apply to companies like McKinsey, BCG, Bain, Booz Allen, Hamilton in those days, etc. And there your job is to help other companies figure out how to solve their business problems. So you're more like a business advisor. And on the other side, the other major type of jobs are what are called finance jobs. This would be investment banking, where you help other companies buy and sell shares of other companies, or it could be what is called sales and trading. In sales and trading, think about a stockbroker, somebody who buys and sells shares, but this is a little bit more complex. But think of it like somebody who's selling not shares necessarily, but a little more complicated instruments. In simple language, think of them as they're like stockbrokers, but a little bit more, I would say, more advanced, and it's a little more complicated. All right. So that is the scenario. Now, I had no interest in finance. I didn't want to do sales and trading. I thought, okay, maybe consulting seems like something I could do because I have run operations. I understand how organizations work, etc., etc. So I said, okay, consulting, that's it for me. But then one of my friends said, you know what? Why don't you apply to a couple of investment banks for a sales and trading job? He said, what's the harm? If you don't get a consulting job, you just have a backup option. But I said, look, I have no interest. I don't want to do those jobs. He said, it doesn't matter. What's the cost? What do you lose from your pocket? I said, yeah, that sort of makes sense. What's the harm? So then I applied also to a couple of investment banks for a sales and trading position. Now, unfortunately, I got shortlisted at two banks. And one of them was a bank called Morgan Stanley, which used to be one of the leading global banks in the investment banking area. All right. So now I went for the interview and I was completely unprepared. I had no idea what the job is like. I had done no preparation. I just walk in raw, fresh. And then I went in and there were two guys there. One was a senior managing director, another was slightly junior guy. And I gave them my resume and they were looking at it, and half a minute, they just read it up and down. And they must have been wondering, what is this police officer at Wharton looking for a job in finance? It's just not making sense. They're very confused. Then they asked me a couple of questions and figured that I had no idea about anything in finance. Then this guy said, look, your resume has consulting written everywhere from top to bottom. What he meant was that the kind of profile that I have created, this is so suitable for consulting. So the question he asked was, have you applied for consulting jobs? Now, in these interviews, you are supposed to say no. Why? Because you want to show them that, look, I am so interested in what you guys do that I cannot even think of applying for any other job. But I didn't want to lie. So I said, yes, I've applied. And he asked, which firms? So I named all the big consulting firms. I said, I've applied to McKinsey, BCG, Bain, Booz Allen, Hamilton, etc., etc. So when he heard that, he realized that I was not interested in this, and that was practically the end of the interview. But then since I had gone there, they had to ask some question. And finally he said, okay, tell me this. If we give you some money to invest, how are you going to invest it? And the reason they asked was they just wanted to see if I have thought about investing in finance. Do I understand anything? I had no idea. So now I was thinking, how can I dodge the question so I don't have to answer? Then I started asking counter questions. I said, yeah, how much money? Depends on that. He said, you assume, let's say $10 million. I said, okay. Then I said, depends upon What is the risk that you want? What's the duration of investment? He said, doesn't matter. Assume anything you want. And I said, which geography? He said, that also doesn't matter. Anything across the globe, whatever you want, you can invest. Tell us, what will you do if I give you $10 million? Now I was in FX. I had to give some answer. Then instead of giving a meaningful answer, a sensible answer would have been to say, I would buy shares of this companies, or I would buy this particular instrument, or some specific idea. But instead, I gave a very vague, stupid answer. I said, I will invest 30%, let's say about $3 million in US stocks. Which stocks, which company? I didn't say anything. Then I said, another $3 million I will invest in emerging market stocks. What does that mean? It practically means nothing. Could be India, could be Brazil, which company, nothing, no detail. Just I said 3 million here, 3 million there. Unfortunately, I was still left with 4 million. I don't know what to do. Then I said, I will invest $2 million in US government treasury bonds. But then I was still left with another 2 million. Then I said, that I will give to some hedge fund to manage. Now think about it. Now, those of you who don't know finance, a hedge fund essentially, it's a bunch of people who are managing somebody else's money. They're investing money on your behalf. Now, this guy told me to manage the money or to invest his money, and I'm giving it to somebody else to invest. So essentially, I'm handing over my job to somebody else. So he figured, and I was totally giving totally stupid answers. Then he said, oh, so you will manage your money by giving somebody else to manage it. I said, yeah, what's the harm? So at that point, I was probably totally shameless. And then this guy who was asking me questions, he looked at my resume again and he said, Rajan, I have seen many resumes not as eye-popping as yours. But those people, they invest time. They learn, they do research, they understand finance. So if you're really interested, why don't you spend some time, try to understand these things, do some research, get to know the field better. And then if you're genuinely interested, why don't you apply next time? So he was like very, very kind. He was very, given the stupidity of my answers, I think he was very nice and polite. And I felt really bad. This was not the way to do a job interview. And then when I came out, I was wondering, why the hell did I apply? And then I remembered my friend's advice. What's the harm? There is harm. When you do stupid things, always some harm comes, whether it is monetary loss or this kind of embarrassment. There is harm. My gut knew this was not the right thing. But what happened? I heard what somebody else was saying. Sometimes in life, we know what's the right answer and we know what's the wrong answer. And when you know what the wrong answer is and what the right answer is, do the right thing. Don't listen to the crowd. Why? Because it's your life and it's your decision. Thank you. I hope you found this useful, and if you did, subscribe to this channel, and I hope to talk to you soon in another video. And thank you for listening.